I've got another question.
Yeah.
I want to talk about access. And you reminded me, Sasha and Simon, when you were talking about how you were only able to photograph some of these naval drones, or this guy's hands, even though it didn't have any identifying tattoos or markings on it. Because, look, we've all been in and out of Ukraine for years now, and access is a challenge, and it's changed quite a lot over the years. I mean, I remember the early days of 2014, where we were crossing the front line on not even a daily basis. Sometimes I'd wake up in Donetsk and it would be under Russian control, DNR control, and I'd cross the front line to be with Ukrainian soldiers, and then at night go back and sleep in Donetsk again, right? We would go to the border of Russia and cover some kind of fight out there, and then come back and stay the night in Slavyansk, in Ukrainian controlled territory. We cannot move across the front line anymore. The coverage, our coverage, is on one side of this conflict. But within that one side even, there are a lot of restrictions. Now, some of them are understandable for security reasons, obviously, but how do you think about approaching your subjects, your coverage, what you write about? I mean, you've had great access with Zelensky's camp, I'm sure, as he and his inner circle does with me. We talk about things on the record, and we talk about a lot more off the record. And as a journalist, I think one of the cool things about this job is we know a whole lot. Frustratingly, we know a whole lot more than we're able to publish.
Yeah.
But how do you take into consideration those things that you know and you want to publish that could make a great scoop? Or how do you talk your way into a high-profile interview with someone who doesn't really want to sit down with us?
Yeah, there's a lot to build on there. Yeah, I mean, I in terms of access, the first thing that comes to mind, honestly, is I do think back to the 2014 days when that front line was much more, it was possible, it was dangerous to cross. Crossing it meant going through checkpoints where you could be detained, arrested, beaten.
And many of us were.
And as happened, yeah, it happened to me 3 times. So not fun, but it was possible and it was important. And I find it regrettable that basically the Russian-controlled territory is just a no-go zone for journalists, and that includes, for many of us at least, Russia itself. So I've been banned from entering Russia since 2015, largely because of my coverage of the beginning of the war. So in terms of access, I find that very frustrating. I wish that wasn't the case. I would love to be able to go and sort of tell more of that side of the story. And in terms of the second part of what you said, yeah, just to respond to it, like the access. So I have been really privileged in being able to, certainly in 2022 and into 23, with that focus that I mentioned earlier of focusing on the individual. President Zelensky and his team were very open to having me basically just hang around. And the book that I wrote and published about a year ago was only possible thanks to that. But the people often ask me, like, how did you get that access? And in many ways, it was just kind of sticking to the story. I first began reporting intensively on Ukraine in 2009, during the elections that put Yanukovych in power. So that kind of commitment to the story, being there. I met Zelensky when he was running for president in 2019. So I think the answer is just being there. And going back to something we talked about just a little earlier, it makes it harder for the journalists who are coming in from Afghanistan or other stories and trying to work their way in and get access into decision-making circles in Ukraine, because they don't have that reputation. Nobody knows them. They don't have the contacts. They don't have the contact list. And I think that is a competitive advantage for reporters like all of us who have been very committed to covering Ukraine for many years. And I think that is the key to the access. I can only speak for myself that I've had, just knowing the people. When I asked to be able to come in during the first months of the invasion and basically hang around, It wasn't like a stranger coming to Zelensky with that request. He knew me. I had written about him before. We had done a number of interviews. I had spent time with him. I traveled with him to the front. So it was kind of a natural thing for me to come in and ask for that access. If I hadn't spent the years before the full-scale invasion, doing that and building those contacts, he would have said, "Who are you? Get out of here." So I think that's the reason for the access, and I don't really know another way to get access like that. You have to basically just be there, and the one thing, and number two, don't screw people over.
So that's important.
That's
and
important.
be charming.
Charming. I don't know if I have
That's
that.
how Sasha gets it.
But